Hi again then guys, and welcome to yet another updated money earning tune for Gran Turismo Sport, obviously on the Blue Moon Bay event. And just like with the GT40 and the KTM, at least for the moment in the game, and of course there's always a chance that new cars could be added which will also work at this level, at the N300 class level, as long as you keep the race clean, you can earn 375 grand a pop. Now, I would still recommend, thanks to the new tyre model and the new physics, using the GT40. So if you already are happy with that, you don't necessarily need to try this one. Plus the car itself is much more expensive than all of the others, of course. However, this is a requested tune because I know many of you guys like to use the Miura. It changes it up a bit. Now this tune is one of those, in a similar way to how the KTM used to be, where people used to say, make sure that you do the event when the LaFerrari isn't present. So exit the event and then come back, so that you'll basically get, like the Enzo for instance, as the best car, or the McLaren F1 as the lead car instead. I would recommend that for this one, because although you can beat the LaFerrari, it's significantly easier if you're up against the Enzo. Because with the LaFerrari, you'll get in the lead around lap, 12, 13, whereas with the Enzo, you're looking at like lap 9 or 10. So as far as the tune itself, as you can see, I have not dropped the weight. And that may seem strange, because we usually do, but the reason is the cost. It costs so many mileage points, and although I do have them to spare, I tend to save them for cars which I tend to use a lot, and which I plan to use a lot. So for me, I prefer the GT40, so it would be a waste on this one. If, though, you do plan to use this one, you'll definitely want to do that. Now, as far as the traction control, we've got that turned off. I know that varies from driver to driver. We've got sport softs, front and rear. As far as the suspension itself, and of course the suspension and the diff are the biggest changes that you'd have to make since the tyre updates, which incidentally seem to have had the effect of removing the middle ground to some degree. Because before you could have a car that was really slippery or really heavy, and then you could tune it to be in between the two, and that was what made stuff like the KTM so good. Whereas now it's like that centre part has gone to some degree, and it's more like a switch. It's either super heavy or super slippery, which is a shame. It's kind of lost a bit of the nuance, which seems to be making it less realistic in a counterintuitive kind of way. But as far as the suspension, getting on with it, the ride height we've got almost as low as possible. There's a little bit of clearance. As far as the frequency, you want that as high as possible, like with the GT40. Anti-roll, once again, as high as possible. For the dampers, well, compression and rebound on the dampers, we've gone as low as possible. I've got 1 degree of camber, but only on the back, and neutral toe as usual. Downforce we haven't adjusted. As far as the diff, I've gone for 40, 60, 60, and it makes a huge difference on this car when you adjust any of those three. So test other things, but you might need to come back to it depending on what you use. And finally, for the gearbox, I'd recommend an auto setting of 186, and then if I recall, I don't think I've changed any of the individual ones, as I rarely do, because with this car the speed pretty much takes care of itself. So what you want to know now, of course, is how does it actually perform, and how has it changed in the race itself? Well, the primary way is what I mentioned just now. It's almost as if the car has lost that centre ground, and that was really the sweet spot where all three of these N300 cars made their bread and butter, because it was that combination of great top speed for their power, up around 170, 180, but that they were so manoeuvrable, especially the KTM, whereas now, because of the fact that we've to some degree lost that middle ground, or at least it's harder to find the sweet spot, it means that the cars are basically just one or the other. They're either really heavy or really slippery. And the problem as well is, because this track has 3 very different types of corner, you kind of need both to some degree. Now, as far as using this Miura, as I said, I would strongly recommend doing the no LaFerrari method, as many people like to anyway, and it makes a huge difference. As long as you keep the car relatively stable, through the first and second corner, well, the first corner in particular, you can turn pretty heavy, brake early, turn in early, give it the throttle out of the corner. Second corner's easy anyway, you can just cruise around it. For the final corner in particular though, and this is where the loose and heavy steering problem comes in, you will need to slow down quite a bit. Now, when I say slow down, you can still take the corner at over 130, so it's not slow, it's just slower than the GT40. It already was slower though, So, as I said, this is more a tune for people who just want to use something different, or for people, and I know there are some of you, who just prefer the Miura. And of course, that's a legitimate reason. That's why I use the GT40. Even when the KTM was the fastest, I still just like the Ford more. So if you do decide to use this tune, or want to check out my others if you are new to the channel, then you can click through on screen here to do that. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.